Hi guys, I'm Dan at vintagevelo.org, and today we are going to try and answer a question that's on a lot of people's minds. What rides better? Old school steel with skinny tyres or new style carbon with fat tyres? Now, a few weeks ago we rode this really cool ex-Gatorade Bianchi TSX, and I was blown away by how buttery smooth the ride was, yet still packing tons of feel. And in fact, if you remember rightly, I came up with a rather fine butter analogy, and it did bring up the question as to whether the current trend for fat tyres on race bikes is detrimental or beneficial to the ride quality. And by that I mean I don't just want I don't look for a super soft ride. I want a race bike that is comfortable and smooth but gives me all the feedback and assurance and power that I expect from riding a race bike. I'm not riding a mountain bike. If I want to ride a vintage mountain bike or a current mountain bike, I'll go out and ride one. This is road we're talking about here, so I want to get the best out of it. Now, we're not going to mess around. We are going to take out the Bianchi TSX running 23mm skinny Veloflex tyres, and it is going to be up against a virtually brand new Cervelo C3 with current spec 32mm Grand Prix 5000 Continental tyres on here. Lovely head rims as well and disc brake. This bike, to be fair, should be riding wise fantastic. Sure, as far as the looks goes, come on, but let's see how this thing rides. It'll be a fascinating question. I'm going to try and remain as neutral as possible. This is not my bike, I should point out. This is one of my bikes. You would assume I'm going to come down in favour of the Bianchi, but I'm going to do my best to keep an open mind. The rain stopped, the roads are wet, but the sun is shining, so let's just get out there, ride them both head to head. First up, out on the Cervelo C3. Now this is quite a wise choice for the modern rider. Obviously not as out there as an S5 or an R5, which personal choice. If I was buying one, I'd probably go for those, but if I was buying one of them, I'd probably buy a Dogma. But it's a pretty good bike to ride. I can feel straight away there's a lot of compliance engineered into the rear triangle. Those rear seat stays have got a nice curve and they are pencil thin, and you could definitely tell the engineers have done a lot of work to building compliance into this frame. It's certainly racy, but it's not going to flog you to death. Also the setup, we've got Shimano Ultegra 11 speed with some, I think these are rotor cranks, and we've got a lovely head wheel set. And on the subject of the wheel set, sorry, it's a little bit of climbing here. On the subject of the wheel set, as you would expect to see on a modern bike setup, they're really quite wide rims to make the most of the 32mm tyres. Now, if you try and squish a really wide tyre onto a narrow rim, it's going to wobble around a bit. If you want a nice fat tyre, you really do need a fat rim to go with it. Yeah, so far so good. So if you're like me, you've probably read an awful lot of reports in the magazines and review channels on how excellent big, fat, wide tyres or wide rims are, and how much faster and better and less rolling resistance you get. One common theme with those reviews is that they are usually paid for and sponsored by the wheel manufacturers. Now, in this modern world, I'm not suggesting you get what you pay for, but let's not forget who's paying for them. So the objective of this test is just to see from a neutral perspective, or as neutral as I can do, how they ride in comparison with each other. And that's a number of things. It's not just softness and smoothness. It is compliance. I don't want a tyre to feel dull. I don't want a ride to feel dead. I want to feel urge, and I want to be excited. I'm on a race bike. That is ultimately what you're riding a race bike for. If not, gravel bike. Okay, well, they descend okay, slower than I thought. Yeah, much slower than I thought. Swap bikes now. Now we are out on the 1992 Bianchi TSX. Not mistaken, that's 30 years of design difference between the two bikes. So it should be a fascinating comparison. Now, this one, you may remember from a few weeks ago, we took it out for a road test and review. We've got 8-speed Shimano Dura Ace throughout on here. I think some Mavic rims and some 23mm Veloflex. And it is a really lovely bike to ride. It was ridden in the 92 season, ex-Gatorade team bike, I don't know the rider's name, but it does work and ride brilliantly. And the first thing I noticed, and it's not an intentional observation, but the 8-speed Dura Ace shifts so much sweeter than the Ultegra 11. Maybe just because it's doing a lot less, but it just feels nicer, feels more positive, and it's really quiet. Oh my god, it's so much more quiet. There's a time and a place to hear a hub, and silence can be golden. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, 23mm Veloflex here on the rather beautiful Bianchi TSX. Now, let's dispel one mystery about tyre size. Big tyre size is quicker. Wrong, absolutely not. It's totally dependent upon the surface with which you're riding. The fastest tyres are still really skinny tubulars at high pressure. If you go to a velodrome or you watch the Olympics, you will not find a 32mm tyre being run at 56 or 70 psi. It will be a 19-inch or 22-inch tubular run at about 140 or 160. That's the fastest because they're riding on wood boards. Now, I have ridden 19mm tubular track tyres on the road, and I can tell you they're proper mad. They're hysterical. They're certainly electric to ride on, but when it comes to braking, no, don't do that. They are terrifying. They will skid up and lock up all over the shop. So that's why 23 or 25mm are my personal choice. Now that just feels faster and more fun. Well, that's it. I've been out on both the C3 and the Bianchi TSX, one after the other, to give me a good idea of how they feel. Now, I've got to remember, this is a comparison of how old school tyres feel up against new modern setups. And I'm trying to remain as neutral as possible. Obviously, I love my old school still, so I know there's a tendency for me to be a little bit biased. Now, both tyres set up very similar. I had 85 psi in the 23mm Veloflex, and on those 32mm Contis we had 75. I know a lot of people run them a little bit lower than that as well, but I felt 75 was about the right sweet spot for me today. Conclusions. Now, the C3, without a doubt, is more plushy and comfy. It's softer, it's smoother, definitely. Now, that comes at a cost.
I was thinking of adjectives to sum up the ride quality, and I'm going to go with pleasant. Now, I'm not sure whether pleasant is what you want from your race bike, but it was nice, you know. It was certainly, if you wanted to get out there and do 4 hours straight, you would probably come out the other end feeling quite fresh. You know, it was very nice to ride. Now, the TSX in comparison is a lot more racy. It's still comfortable. You could still do 4 hours on it, but you'd know about it a lot more. And it makes you want to ride faster, and it feels a bit more lively and reactive and electric. And I think those are adjectives you want to use when you're talking about a race bike. In general, I can see why people are going for big fat tyres. Me personally, I think that Cervelo C3 would be a lot better actually if it had 25mm tyres on there, up at about 90 psi. I think you get a much livelier ride, be a bit more rewarding. But hey, if you like pleasant, 32 is the way to go. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. Do like and subscribe for anything else that's cool to do with vintage bikes. Thanks a lot.